St Albans Masorti Synagogue and the St Albans Museum, looking at the history of the Jewish community in the city. And a very rich history it has too. It's part of an exhibition that was due to be displayed at the museum, but which has now been postponed until early 2022 due to the pandemic. However, all the incredible stories told in the installation will be available for you to view online. Well, Helen Singer is one of the organisers from the synagogue and she joins me now. Helen, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Good to talk to you. Before we talk about the online talk based around this exhibition, your own family history, which is very much a part of it, is pretty remarkable, isn't it? Talk me through what you know.
Oh, yes, I'm really pleased that my story is one of many featured in the exhibition. The exhibition is called Arriving and Belonging, Stories from the St Albans Jewish Community. And the panel event is called What Does It Mean to Belong? So going back to my story, both my parents were child refugees from Nazi Germany. My mother came here on the Kindertransport, and her life and those of her brother and sister and my grandmother were saved by a friend of my grandmother's, an English friend called Mary Caro. And you can see a photograph of my mother arriving at Liverpool Street Station in July 1939 in the exhibition. And then my father was sent to England to Farnham Grammar School. His parents were both dentists in Nuremberg in Germany. I think it was quite unusual for my grandmother to be a dentist as well. But after Kristallnacht, my grandfather was sent to Dachau. And then the wonderful headmaster of Farnham Grammar School, where my father was a pupil, a man called Dr. Morgan, arranged for my grandparents to come to England. So their lives were saved too, but they all squeaked out just before the war. Unfortunately, my mother's father, Willy Korn, perished in Auschwitz. He didn't get out of Germany.
Your grandfather?
But, my grandfather, yeah. But yeah, we sort of feel that it sort of highlights huge acts of kindness, but also sadness. But we're really grateful that my family found sanctuary here, along with many others.
And was your family ever able to personally thank this Mary, who clearly saved your grandma's life?
Yes, they remained friends all their lives, and the family stayed in touch, which is really good.
And this remains part of your heritage, but also part of your consciousness, does it, Helen?
Yeah, I think so. I feel as I've got older, and since my parents died, when we discovered lots of documents that we've given to the Wiener Holocaust Library, that there's a bit of legacy of stories that need telling. But I'm also really interested in other people's stories too, and how they impact on their lives.
So tell us a bit about the history of Jewish people in St Albans. Goes back a long way.
It does, actually, yes. So the exhibition actually has a timeline of Jewish life in St Albans in England. So way back, Aaron of Lincoln apparently lent money for the building of the Abbey, and then all Jews were expelled from England in 1290. And it wasn't till about the 1650s that Cromwell allowed Jewish people to come back into the country. And in the exhibition, one of our contributors can trace her ancestors right back to one of the earliest settlers from this time.
But a Jewish person lent money for the Abbey to be built, or in part?
Yes, I think at the time, Jewish people were very restricted in what trades they could have, and money lending was one of them, yes.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Yes.
Interfaith relations back in the 13th century.
I suppose so, yes. And then in St Albans, at a more local level, you probably know that there were Jewish families we know working. There's a raincoat factory that was called Nicholson's in Sutton Road in Fleetville. Mm-hmm. And from census records, you can see that along those roads there were many Jewish people. Some had come from Manchester, where Nicholson had moved his factory from, and some were from London, and some had come via Russia, where they were fleeing persecution at the turn of the last century. And one of our contributors, Jo Conroy, her grandfather actually worked at Nicholson's, and her grandmother had a fur trimming shop next to where Nicholson's is.
And so as you know, you started this project, I believe, a long while ago, a few years ago, but as the years have gone by, more and more stories come to the fore as more and more people get to hear about your project, I imagine, yes? So it's an ongoing developing thing, is it?
It is actually still developing. It really grew out of two previous projects which SAMS sort of undertook. So we had something called SAMS Roots, and we got Heritage Lottery funding. And Caroline Pierce, who's a biographer, a member of SAMS, interviewed 12 members of the community about their family stories and what brought them to SAMS. And then we followed that up. Pauline Simons and I We asked people to just send a picture and 300 words to do with their family history, and we plotted it on a virtual map using something called History Pin, which is the project is called Mapping Sam's Roots. And the stories come from right around the world. And actually, just 2 days ago, we got a 112th story from an amazing Holocaust survivor called Ziggy Schipper. So we're delighted that it's still open, the exhibition, the project, for more stories.
Tell us more about her story. Where did she come from?
Well, Ziggy's a man, actually.
Oh,
so
sorry.
he survived camps, and I think his story is so complex, really.
Okay.
His daughter Lou is happy to give talks on her father's behalf. But we had all these stories, so we went to talk to Sarah Keeling, the curator at the St Albans Museum and Gallery, who said that we could have this exhibition at the Keepers Galleries, which, yes, as we know, sadly, has been rescheduled. It was going to be this year.
We'll come on to that, but give me an idea of some of the other sort of stories of Jewish people connected with St Albans that you've uncovered, that you can tell us about.
Yeah, I mean, there's some amazing sort of powerful stories, and there isn't time to sort of let you know all of them now, and you can look in the exhibition. But just to pick out a few, there's a really moving story from Evelyn Gold about her mother, whose life was saved by her school friend's family in Poland, and Evelyn's aunt was saved by Oskar Schindler. And in the exhibition, you can see a copy of Schindler's List with Evelyn's aunt's name at the top. So it's really sort of powerful. Another contributor describes his grandparents' exile from Iraq. There's a naturalisation certificate signed by Winston Churchill, and There's a story about Vera Lynn. And then we've got some lovely items from a lady called Jennifer Taylor, who was born and brought up in St Albans and still lives here. And her parents owned a ladies' gown shop called Adair's, which is on the ground floor of the Peahen building.
Wow. My great-grandfather used to run a clockmaker's shop.
Did he?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what is there now, because it's no longer there. And he lived in the street nearby. He only had to walk about 100 metres to get to his place of work. So it's at the Abbey end of the High Street, really.
Okay, that's probably near there.
Near Clark's shoe shop, is that on the left, I think? Something like that. I can't remember, but anyway. It's really interesting. So you've been able to divide these stories into 6 themes. Tell us about the themes then.
Well, that's right. Because we had so many stories, we were lucky to have sort of funding in the form of a legacy. We were able to work with some real sort of exhibition professionals. So we talked to Devorah Moritz, who designs exhibitions, and we also worked with Simon Leach Designs. And Devorah helped us make sense how to distill the stories into themes that were universal, really. So, and they tie in with the layout of the exhibition space, which has 2 rooms, and we've got one is arriving and one is belonging. And the themes are, for arriving, we've got sanctuary, courage, and compassion. And in belonging, we've got setting down roots, work, and community. So we've selected like 2 or 3 stories. There's only 18 ones that represent or illustrate these themes.
That's the thing, getting the Kinder Transport or whatever and escaping the horrors of the Nazis and getting over to the UK. That's fantastic. That's step 1. But many of these people were young and they had to then find schools or whatever and housing. And then the older people then had to find work and meet and be part of the community. So you're able to get some sense about how they did set down their roots and how they got to work and how they got involved with the rest of the wider community of St Albans.
Yes, I mean, within St Albans, the Jewish community sort of grew up from those early days at the turn of the last century, and people formed together to create a synagogue in the 1930s and 40s. So that was the United Synagogue, and then the St Albans Masorti Synagogue was founded just 30 years ago. So people have come together. I mean, the stories from the community members are actually from all over. They come from all over the world, and there's an amazing map that shows the roots, which shows where the stories come from. But we've also got another map, which Jennifer Taylor, who I just mentioned, from her recollections of where there were sort of Jewish businesses within the centre of St Albans. So there's another map in there as well.
So how strong would be the active congregations of the 2 synagogues that you've mentioned there? Are you pretty thriving, or you would normally be before the pandemic?
Yes, no, I think both are really, really thriving and have found ways, like all communities, to sort of use Zoom like we are now, and to, carry on and also to work with the community. So one of the sections in the exhibition is called St Albans Life, and we just give some examples of how belonging can be also sort of felt by reaching out to people within the St Albans community, and there's some nice examples of some sort of multi-faith work there as well.
So you approached Sarah Keeling, the curator of St Albans Museum, and you'd previously given a talk, I think, in 2013 to the museum about the history of the Jewish community in St Albans. Sarah said, let's make this work. And originally you would have, been trying to open it this week and this year?
Yeah, actually, I think it was supposed to open on February the 12th, so it's sort of, the date's gone already. But because we had a window where because there are other exhibitions following ours, and because museums aren't reopening until, I think it's May the 17th, we've had to postpone the in-person exhibition. But we have an online exhibition, which we really sort of could be pleased that we're going to launch at the panel event, What Does It Mean to Belong, which is on Wednesday, so that people can see all the objects and exhibits there.
So this is another virtual online event, is it?
It is, yes.
And you've got 100 people signed up already, I believe, yeah?
Yes, I know, it's very exciting. And we were delighted that the Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Hertfordshire, Robert Voss, is going to introduce the talk. And he's also patron of Hearts Welcomes Refugees, which Sam's has links with already. And Daisy Cooper's going to say a few words.
MP
so
for St Albans.
We're really thrilled, yeah.
So they'll all be in their homes or wherever in their offices joining in, but and you have a panel
we do.
to explain the history that you're talking about now, yes?
Yes, so the panel is made up of 3 of the contributors, and their stories illustrate the themes that we've just talked about, and also they reflect the sort of moments in Jewish history that we've also mentioned.
Right. So it's basically it's a talk by the panel after an introduction by the chairperson, Robert Voss. And then the people that are listening in, can they join in and take part at the end of all of that if they want to?
Yeah, there'll be a Q&A so that they can type questions in.
Yeah.
It's a webinar, so yes, they'll be able to do that.
So,
and it's being hosted by the museum. You can still get tickets. It's £5, and it's called What Does It Mean to Belong? And it's 7:30 on Wednesday.
What does it mean to belong? Do you have a website where people need to book then?
Yes, it's on the museum website. If you just put What Does It Mean to Belong, St Albans Museums, you can book there.
And then after that, after the talk and all of that has happened, will that be also recorded and put up online so people can get to it the next day or two?
I think the museum... I'm not sure if they're doing that because it's a paid event. I think that might just be for their internal purposes. But we hope people will still be able to look at the exhibition site from Wednesday.
And hopefully the in-person exhibition for real will be available to go ahead in the museum next year in February 2022, eh?
That's right.
Yeah.
But I can give the details. So from Wednesday, people can go to arrivingbelonging.com and look at the online exhibition, even if they don't go to the talk.
Arrive and Belonging.
Arriving Belonging. Arrivingbelonging.com.
That's really interesting. Well, Helen Singh has been our guest in this part of the show, Sunday Breakfast, 3CR, one of the organisers of that online talk and the exhibition of the history of the Jewish community in St Albans, and Helen's from the St Albans Masorti Synagogue. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much.
Really
That's
good.
Great.
Have a great day, Helen. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.